Donald Trump scored the biggest own goal of his life this week when he sided with President Putin against his own intelligence agencies, saying there was no evidence the Russian state tried to interfere with the US election in 2016. If Trump ends up being impeached for collusion between his campaign and Russia, and the evidence against him is growing, he will look back at what he said this week as a fatal mistake. When even his right-wing supporters, including Fox News, are accusing him of being a traitor and betraying his nation, you know it's serious. I've long felt that Donald Trump is a threat to Western security, and it's now beyond doubt after he decided President Putin is more trustworthy than the FBI or the CIA. Suddenly, the odds on Trump surviving for all 4 years are dramatically reduced. His days could well be numbered, and rightly so. The sooner this dangerous demagogue is out of the White House, the better for all of us.
I can't imagine there's anyone on the planet who hasn't seen it, but it's worth taking a look at, or for just to refresh viewers' memories. Here's a little bit of the president supposedly in action, or should that be inaction?
My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be. I realize that there is a need for some clarification. It should have been obvious. I thought it would be obvious, but I would like to clarify just in case it wasn't. In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia.
So I would sanction the bombing of Russia. Damn, that was meant a bit late, Mr. President. I wouldn't sanction the bombing of Russia. Let's pick up on a couple of things you said. Greg, you said you think he might look back one day and see it as a fatal mistake. I don't think this man has any self-awareness or self-doubt at all. He will think he was right. I think he's almost blaming it already on fake news, so it's probably our fault that he got the words wrong. And secondly, you talked about his chances of staying being dramatically reduced. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think there is such a body of opinion or such a world of support for him there. But to support what you say, Chuck Schumer, who's the Democratic, I stress that because it's the other party, minority leader in the entire history of our country, Americans have never seen a president of the US support an American adversary the way President Trump has supported President Putin. Greg Dyke, I still don't think it's enough.
Well, look, it's not enough yet. I mean, take a look at the New York Daily News front page. It's wonderful.
Oh, I saw that.
Open treason. Yeah. And I've got here, and I was going to give it to you, but you're on my side, so I shan't, my Putin picked Trump badge, which is,
isn't it?
You know, and it is, if it wasn't so serious, it would be funny.
It's both.
It is both.
But if you go back to the peak of the Reagan era and the Star Wars and the Cold War and Thatcher as a prime minister, and of course, you know, you remember that whole period and Russia was the bad guy. Imagine Reagan going over to Russia and then suddenly declaring that he believes the Russians over his own intelligence agencies about the threat of
Well, of course, he didn't really say that. Now he says he didn't.
Yeah.
So, he's now, that's even more scary. He's now the guy who's going to push the button and said, I'll push the, let's push the nuclear button.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, don't push the nuclear button.
Yeah, well, and if there's one area on which Trump has actually damaged his own supporters, and the Republicans in this case, it would be on national security. I mean, historically, they have been the party that is always concerned about Russia and its machinations. And if you look at some remarks from some of his own supporters, let's have a look at them. Republican grandee and Trump supporter, Newt Gingrich. I mean, Newt Gingrich, of all people, he's tweeted, President Trump must clarify his statements in Helsinki on our intelligence system and Putin. It is the most serious mistake of his presidency and must be corrected immediately. Monday's joint press conference was a personal and national embarrassment. That's from the usually supportive Wall Street Journal. Trump's made a very big mistake here. The optics are bad. That's from White House Director of Communications, former Scaramucci. And I'd say it's a lot more than the optics that were bad here.
Do you think he'll go then? You think... Sorry, Michelle, excuse me, one last question.
You can't be sure, but I
genuinely think...
You remember a long time ago we talked about Watergate and you wanted me to explain what Watergate was about, because I'm old enough to have
This is Woodgate, by the way. This is Woodgate. Wouldn't
it came because bit by bit by bit by bit the case was made, and I think this.
But there was a crime at the heart of it, Greg.
Well, I think there's a crime at the heart of this, and I think that's what the special prosecutor is going to come up with.
Maybe.
If the special prosecutor comes up with evidence, I mean, at its worst, I mean, I was reading stuff. The worst case scenario is that Trump and his people helped the Russians undermine the democratic process in 2016 to enable Trump to win. Now, if that's what they come out and say, then he's toast.
OK, and listen, the impeachment, the impeachment shall be, or president shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery or other high crimes or misdemeanours. I still think
there is another way of getting rid of him, and that if the majority of his cabinet say he's no longer fit for office.
Well, Trump's clarification made me laugh. And to continue the laugh, should we look at what the former governor of California had to say?
President Trump, I just saw your press conference with President Putin, and it was embarrassing. I mean, you stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy. I mean, I was asking myself, when are you going to ask him for an autograph or for a selfie or something like that? I mean, you literally sold out at this press conference our intelligence community, our justice system, and worst of all, our country. You're the President of the United States. You shouldn't do that.
I just absolutely loved that clip when he called him a little wet noodle. I wonder if Donald Trump will care about the fact that Schwarzenegger's just called him a little wet noodle.
I don't think he will, but I think the issue for me, and what's fascinating, is that the core heartland of people who support Trump are these very patriotic Americans.
Yes.
They're very proud of their institutions and very fiercely defending national security. And that's why this is weird, because you don't go and embarrass and humiliate your own intelligence community, and you don't go and sidle up to what Americans perceive to be. And I actually think that it's often very simplistic the way they see Putin as this kind of like cartoon character baddie, but never mind, that's how they see him. And that's who Trump's support base is. So it's very weird. I think, you know, this has consequences for us as well. And this is the German foreign minister speaking last week, Heiko Maas, who said, we, and he's speaking about Germany, can no longer completely rely on the White House. I mean, that seems like an understatement. To maintain our partnership with the USA, we must readjust it. The first clear consequence can only be that we need to align ourselves even more closely in Europe. And I fear for us, I feel that we're very alone right now. We are trying to leave Europe. We're trying to cozy up with a completely nutty American president who's busy trashing his own institutions. And where does that leave us? It's a scary time for us to be in
imagine he makes a trade deal with us, and it's actually, sorry, I didn't mean to make that.
What is really bizarre about it is the evidence against him and the relationship with Russia is piling up in America. There's a number of court cases that are going to come up quite soon. Paul Manafort is currently in jail. He was the guy who spent 10 years in Russia and was chairman of his campaign. If Manafort goes native and goes rogue and decides he'll do a deal, I think Trump is toast. But what is interesting is, with all that happening, why on earth would you go and say that out there? You could have just said, well, this is what President Putin says, and my intelligence agencies say different, and we disagree on that. That's all he had to say.
But that would be diplomatic. I'd love to know what he talks about there. Wouldn't you? Behind those closed doors. I'd absolutely be.
I did tweet hashtag Woodgate, but I realised that by tomorrow I'm going to have to correct that and say, sorry, I meant hashtag Wouldn't.
Wouldn't get. Yeah, you do.